जय गुड मॉर्निंग।
मॉर्निंग।
भैया जी नमस्ते।
नमस्ते भाई। ये ऐसा है ना कि मैं ये थोड़ा सा इसको स्पीड अप कैसे कर सकते हैं? बहुत ज्यादा नहीं पर फिर भी।
जय जी ये ज्यादा बड़ा है नहीं वैसे।
क्या? अच्छा अच्छा।
हम्म,
18,000 मतलब मेरे हिसाब से तो इसको लग जाएंगे 10 years।
नहीं जय जी जानते हैं।
हाँ बताओ।
अब अगर हम लोग क्या करेंगे कि अब अगर मॉर्निंग और इवनिंग में टाइम निकाल पाए, जैसे
हाँ
हम लोग 4:30 5:30 करते हैं, वैसे
हाँ।
7:30 से 8:30 रेगुलर कर लें इवनिंग में, अगर आप लोगों के पास टाइम हो तो।
5:30 शाम को?
नहीं, 7:30 से 8:30 जो है इवनिंग में जो करते थे
हाँ।
वो रेगुलर कर लें।
अब मेरे को कोई 7:30 से 8:30 मेरे को दिक्कत नहीं है।
रूपा तुम बताओ।
मेरे को है।
है।
हाँ हाँ बिल्कुल।
अच्छा।
मेरी 8 o'clock तक तो क्लिनिक ही रहती है।
अच्छा, तो फिर यही, फिर चलिए फिर ऐसा करते हैं कि जो
हाँ
चीजें स्किप करने वाली वो स्किप कर दीजिए।
नहीं,
और
स्किप
उसको
मत करो। मतलब
हम्म
मेरा कहने का मतलब है जैसे श्लोक और परपोर्ट पढ़ लो फिर फटाफट। जैसे सपोज
हाँ,
करो 5 श्लोक डायरेक्ट पढ़ लिए,
जी।
ठीक है, जस्ट
हम्म
रीड इट। और फिर उसका 5 के बाद में जो किसी को जैसे परपोर्ट, तो अब तो हम लोगों ने काफी कुछ भगवत गीता भी पढ़ी है और ये भी पढ़ी है, तो मोटी
हम्म
मोटी चीजें तो पता चल गई है ना।
हम्म
Unless you have any doubt or you want to really share some insight, तो
हम्म,
बता दो
हाँ
बस। है
ठीक।
ना?
तो
बस
हम्म
5 पढ़ लिया, फिर उसका
हाँ
5 कम से कम 10 कर ले। हम लोग अभी हम 5 कर
ठीक।
रहे हैं।
हाँ।
10 तक कर ले। और अगर चाहो तो मतलब शाम वाला एंगल जो है ना, वो मुझे बड़ा अच्छा लग रहा है। लेकिन अब रूपा का तो अभी फैमिली है, पता नहीं वरुण भी आ
नहीं जानते
जाए।
हैं, बात
हाँ
क्या है कि टाइम निकालने से ही टाइम निकलेगा।
हाँ, यस यस।
तो
या
ये एक काम करें,
हाँ
हम लोग शाम को कंटिन्यू कर दें,
हाँ
और रूपा जब ज्वाइन कर पाएगी तो कर लेगी, नहीं रूपा को ये हम अपडेट करते रहेंगे कितना हो गया, रूपा अपना सेल्फ से स्टडी कर लेगी।
हाँ, नहीं हम कोशिश करेंगे क्योंकि कभी कभी रहता भी टाइम है, ऐसी बात नहीं है।
हम्म
नहीं तो फिर कर्म है मतलब ऐसा है ना
जी।
कि ये ठीक है, कर्म है। मतलब कि पहले हम लोगों ने सोचा है कृष्णा पढ़ने के लिए, बट कृष्णा नहीं यार, ये ज्यादा इम्पोर्टेंट, ये फिलोसफी है ना। ये
हम्म
थोड़ा सा और आगे इसके अंदर में काफी अच्छे आने वाले हैं
या
6।
धीरे धीरे एक काम और करेंगे कि जैसे
हाँ
हम लोग फ्राइडे सैटरडे को जो करते हैं,
हाँ
आ, क्या मतलब जो गीता पढ़ते हैं,
हाँ।
वो थर्सडे फ्राइडे सैटरडे 3 दिन वो कर ले, और मंडे ट्यूसडे वेंसडे ये कर ले।
फ्राइडे सैटरडे संडे, फ्राइडे सैटरडे और
नहीं, थर्सडे फ्राइडे सैटरडे ये कर ले,
हाँ हाँ
जो कर रहे थे उसी को
हाँ। यार
थर्सडे में एक्सटेंड कर दें।
चक्कर क्या है ना कि वो अब वो वाला प्रोग्राम सेट शेड्यूल है, काफी लोग उसके अंदर में फिट हो चुके हैं।
हाँ
अब
हाँ,
तो डिस्टर्ब नहीं करना चाह रहे
तो
हैं।
ठीक है, तो यही फिर वेंसडे तो हम
मतलब
लोग कर
उसी
ही
उसी
लेंगे।
टाइम स्लॉट में हम लोग अपना अलग से ये पढ़ ले, वो दैट इज ओके।
हाँ ठीक है, ठीक ठीक ठीक
है ना? दैट
ठीक
इज ओके। उसके अंदर में हम लोग भागवतम कर लें, बस खत्म
ठीक
बात। है ना?
ठीक।
तो
जी।
लेट अस ट्राई टू डू इट फ्रॉम टुडे।
हाँ टुडे। तो यही देखिए, तो फिर डेट देखिए, वेंसडे को तो हम लोग अलग करते ही हैं, तो इसका मतलब मंडे ट्यूसडे और थर्सडे 3 दिन रहेगा।
हाँ हाँ हाँ
है ना?
हाँ, मंडे
और
ट्यूसडे
टाइम यही
थर्सडे
7:30
तीन
से
दिन
साढ़े
और
आठ
बढ़ जाएगा मतलब, यस।
है।
हाँ, और वरुण वगैरह का, और वरुण और ये इनका ये है कि जब ये चाहेंगे ज्वाइन कर लेंगे, या
जी
इनको अलग से मैं वीडियो भी पोस्ट करता हूँ। ये पे पता चल जाएगा भाई
जी।
ये वाले श्लोक से ये वाले श्लोक तक पढ़ा है, तो ये लोग बीच में एक बार मतलब अपना देख लेंगे बीच में।
तो यही वरुण के लिए 7:30 से 8:30 ठीक रहेगा।
हाँ, उनके लिए मेरे ख्याल में ठीक रहेगा।
ठीक।
विल बी
तो
ओके।
ये फिर आज से स्टार्ट कर देंगे।
हाँ हाँ, तो ठीक है, ओके। अभी
जी
स्टार्ट करते हैं, हैं?
जी।
ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय।
ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय।
ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय।
ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय।
देवाय।
ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय।
ओम
ओम
नमो
नमो
भगवते वासुदेवाय।
देवाय।
हाँ, तो फिर आज से ऐसा ही करते हैं, कह रहे हैं कि
जी।
पढ़ते जाते हैं।
हाँ
5 पढ़ लेते हैं एक साथ, या
हाँ,
कहो तो 2 पढ़ ले, 2 पढ़ ले एक साथ, या
जी
दो पढ़ लें और फिर उसके बाद अगर कुछ कहना है किसी को तो कह ले,
जी
अदरवाइज उसी को रिपीट करना कोई बहुत ज्यादा वो नहीं बोलते।
ठीक 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 जी
तो अब पढ़ो तुम क्रम में।
जी। सोय मध्य महाराज भगवान भूत भावना काल रूपो काल रूपो वर्तीर्णो अस्याम भावाय सुरदुष्वाम। जी जी बस ट्रांसलेशन पढ़ ले रहे हैं
हाँ नहीं, ट्रांसलेशन परपोर्ट दोनों ही नहीं।
जी।
हाँ
That supreme personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, in the guise of all-devouring time, kāla-rūpa, has now descended to the earth to eliminate the envious from the world. Purport: there are two classes of human beings, namely the envious and the obedient. Since the Supreme Lord is one, the father of all living beings, the envious living beings are also his sons, but they are known as the asuras. But the living beings who are obedient to the Supreme Father are called devtas or demigods because they are not contaminated by the material conception of life. Not only are the asuras envious of the Lord in even denying the existence of the Lord, but they are also envious of all other living beings. The predominance of asuras in the world is occasionally rectified by the Lord when he eliminates them from the world and establishes a rule of devtas like the Pandavas. His designation as Kal is in disguise is significant. He is not at all dangerous, but he is the transcendental form of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. For the devotees, his factual form is disclosed, and for the non-devotees, he appears like kāla-rūpa, which is a causal form. This causal form of the Lord is not at all pleasing to the asuras, and therefore they think of Lord as formless in order to feel secure that they will not be vanquished by the Lord. जी
चलो आगे पढ़ो।
हाँ जी।
कोई अगर
निष्पाद
बताना है तो पूछ सकते हो बीच में, बट अदरवाइज आगे पढ़ो।
जी 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 जी। जो लास्ट हम लोगों ने पढ़ा तो इसमें मेन चीज बस ये है कि ये जो कलयुग भी है इससे भी बहुत ज्यादा डरने की जरूरत नहीं है। इसमें भी जितनी भी चीजें हो रही हैं वो ईश्वर ही एक तरह से करवा रहे हैं।
हाँ लेकिन ये इस चीज से कहाँ है, मतलब ओवरऑल है कर्म है ये बात,
जी जी
ओवरऑल
जी
ये
जी
बात है। अभी तो हाल फिलहाल ये वही ये नारद मुनि जो है ना उनको युधिष्ठिर को बता रहे हैं कि भाई ये काल जो है
जी
ये भगवान आ गए हैं यहाँ पर, और ये जो है असुरों को खत्म करने के लिए आए हैं।
हाँ
ये
ठीक ठीक। निष्पादितम देव कृत्यम वशेषम प्रतीक्षते तावद यूयम वेक्षध्वम भवेद यावधि ईश्वरः। Translation: the Lord has already performed his duties to help the demigods and he is awaiting the rest. You Pandavas may wait as long as the Lord is here on earth. Purport: the Lord descends from his abode, Krishna, the topmost planet in the spiritual sky, in order to help the demigod administrators of this material world when they are greatly vexed by the asuras, who are envious not only of the Lord but also his devotees. As referred to above, the conditioned living beings contact material association by their own choice, dictated by a strong desire to lord it over the resource of the material world and become imitation lords of all they survey. Everyone is trying to become an imitation of God. There is keen competition amongst such imitation gods, and such competitors are generally known as asuras. When there are too many asuras in the world, then it becomes a hell for those who are devotees of the Lord. Due to the growth of the asuras, the mass of people who are generally devoted to the Lord by nature and the pure devotees of the Lord, including the demigods in the higher planets, pray to the Lord for relief, and the Lord either descends personally from his abode or deputes some of his devotees to remodel the fallen condition of human society or even animal society. Such disruptions take place not only in human society but also among animals, birds, and other living beings, including the demigods in the higher planets. Lord Shri Krishna descended personally to vanquish asuras like Kans, Jarasandh and Shishupal. And during the reign of Maharaja Yudhishthira, almost all the Asuras were killed by the Lord. Now he was awaiting the annihilation of his own dynasty called the Yadu ones, who appeared by his will in the world. He wanted to take them away by his own departure of his eternal abode. Narad, like Vidur, did not disclose the imminent annihilation of the Yadu dynasty, but indirectly gave a hint to the king and his brothers to wait till the incident happened and the Lord departed.
भाई यहाँ पर ना ये परपोर्ट में काफी कुछ बता दिया उन्होंने फ्यूचर का भी, लेकिन ये अगर आप खाली ट्रांसलेशन देखें तो उसमें यही द लॉर्ड हैज ऑलरेडी परफॉर्म्ड हिज ड्यूटी टू हेल्प डेमिगॉड्स एंड ही इज अवेटिंग द रेस्ट। मतलब उन्होंने काफियों को तो खत्म कर चुके हैं, है ना
जी।
और अब वो जो है बाकियों का खत्म करने का सोच रहे हैं, और बाकियों में मतलब उनके अपने खुद के वंशज जो यदु है उनको छोड़ के चले जाएंगे तो वो गुंडे बदमाश बन जाएंगे, समझे आप, उनको भी ले जाना है। तो ये बता गए हैं यहाँ पे यू पांडवास में, ये बड़ी लाइन है कि ये जो बता रहे हैं यहाँ पे, यू पांडवास में वेट एज लॉन्ग एज द लॉर्ड इज हियर ऑन द अर्थ। ये यहाँ पे क्रूशली बता दिया, ये हिस्टोरिकल अकाउंट है कि भाई तुम लोग भी यहाँ पे तभी तक रहो जब तक भगवान है
जी।
हाँ चलो आगे पढ़ो, है ना।
थर्ड बहुत छोटा सा है जी।
हाँ चलो पढ़ो।
धृतराष्ट्र सह भ्राता गांधार्या च स्वभार्याया दक्षिणेन हिमवत ऋषीणाम आश्रम गतः। O king, your uncle Dhritarashtra, his brother Vidur, and his wife Gāndhārī have gone to the southern side of the Himalaya mountain where there are shelters of great sages. To pacify the mourning of Maharaj Yudhishthira, Narad first of all spoke from the philosophical point of view, and then he began to describe the future movements of his uncle, which he could see by his foreseeing powers, and thus began to describe as follows.
चलो 2 और पढ़ लो तुम, पर 5 हो जाएंगे तुम्हारे, ठीक
जी। स्त्रोभिः सप्तभिर्या वै स्वरधुनि सप्तदा व्यधात साप्तानां प्रीते नाना सप्तस्रोताः प्रच्छते। Translation: the place is called Saptasrota, divided by 7, because there the water of the sacred Ganga were divided into 7 branches. This was done for the satisfaction of the 7 great ṛṣis. Snatva anu savanam tasmin hutva jagninya thavidhi abhaksh upshantatma sa aste vigtashana. Translation: on the bank at Saptasrota, Dhṛtarāṣṭra is now engaged in beginning aṣṭāṅga-yoga by bathing 3 times daily in the morning, noon, and evening, by performing the Agni-hotra sacrifice with fire, and by drinking only water. This helps one control the mind and the senses and frees one completely from the thoughts of familiar affection. Purport: the yoga system is a mechanical way to control the senses and the mind and divert them from matter to spirit. The preliminary process are the sitting posture, meditation, spiritual thought, manipulation of air passing within the body, and gradual situation in trance, facing the absolute person, Paramatma. Such mechanical ways of rising to the spiritual platform prescribe some regulative principles of taking bath daily 3 times, fasting as far as possible, sitting and concentrating the mind on spiritual matters, and thus gradually becoming free from vishay or material objectives. Material existence means to be absorbed in the material objective, which is simply illusory. House, country, family, society, children, property, and business are some of the material coverings of the spirit, Atma, and yoga system helps one to become free from all these illusory thoughts and gradually turn towards the absolute person, Paramatma. By material association and education, we learn simply to concentrate on filmy things. But yoga is the process of forgetting them altogether. Modern so-called yogis and yoga system manifest some magical feats, and ignorant person are attracted by such false things, or they accept the yoga system as a cheap healing process for disease of the gross body. But factually, the yoga system is the process of learning to forget what we have acquired throughout the struggle for existence. Dhritarashtra was all along engaged in improving family affairs by raising the standard of living of his sons, or by usurping the property of the Pandavas for the sake of his own sons. These are common affairs for a man grossly materialistic and without knowledge of the spiritual force. He does not see how this can drag one from heaven to hell. By the grace of his younger brother Vidura, Dhritarashtra was enlightened and could see his grossly illusory engagement. And by such enlightenment, he was able to leave home for spiritual realization. Sri Narad Dev was just foretelling the way of his spiritual progress in a place which was sanctified by the flow of celestial Ganga. Drinking water only without solid food is also considered fasting. This is necessary for advancement of spiritual knowledge. A foolish man wants to be a cheap yogi without observing the regulatory principles. A man who has no control over the tongue at first can hardly become a yogi. Yogi and bhogi are two opposite terms. The bhogi, or the merry man who eats and drinks, cannot be a yogi, for a yogi is never allowed to eat and drink unrestrictedly. We may note with profit how Dhritarashtra began his yoga system by drinking water only and sitting calmly in a place with a spiritual atmosphere, deeply absorbed in the thought of the Lord Hari, the personality of Godhead.
हाँ तो मेरे ख्याल में तो सब बता दिया उन्होंने, है ना?
हाँ, इसमें ये जो बात इन्होंने बताई ना कि किस तरह से हमको अपना ध्यान मेटेरियलिस्टिक चीजों से हटा के गॉड की तरफ लगाना, ये प्रोसेस पूरा इन्होंने बता दिया, और किन किन चीजों को हमें डेली थोड़ा सा अपने को वॉच करना चाहिए, ये इन्होंने बता दिया।
हाँ, यहाँ पे टंग का जो रोल है वो भी बहुत अच्छे से बताया है करने में, मतलब काफी और जगह भी बताया है ना
जी
कि ये जो है ना कि खाने पे, मतलब टंग पे भी बड़ा रेस्ट्रिक्शन रखना चाहिए।
हाँ बिल्कुल।
भोजन जो है ना हम लोग जो मिनट मिनट पे खाते रहते हैं उसको भी जरा
हम्म,
थोड़ा चेक में रखना चाहिए।
हाँ चेक में रखना
ट्राई
चाहिए थोड़ा
ट्राई
थोड़ा
ट्राई टू,
करके।
हाँ,
जी
मतलब
जी
ये बात है, मतलब जो जो
हम्म,
स्वाद स्वाद जिसको कहते हैं ना, मतलब वो दैट
जी
पार्ट सो वी शुड ट्राई टू। अब
हाँ
रूपा तुम पढ़ना शुरू करो 54 से।
जी
जी। चितासनो जित श्वासः प्रत्याहित इंद्रियः हरिभवनया ध्वस्त्रजः सततो मूमलः। One who has controlled the sitting postures, the yogic asanas, and the breathing process can turn the senses toward the absolute personality of Godhead, and thus become immune to the contaminations of the modes of material nature, namely mundane godness, passion, and ignorance.
हम्म,
The preliminary activities of the way of yoga are asana, pranayam, pratyahara, dhyana, dharana, etc. Maharaja Dhritarashtra was to attain success in those preliminary actions because he was seated in a sanctified place and was concentrating upon one objective, namely the Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari. Thus, all his senses were being engaged in the service of the Lord. This process directly helps the devotee to get freedom from the contaminations of the three material modes of nature. Even the highest mode, the material mode of goodness, he also is also a cause of material bondage. And what to speak of the other qualities, namely passion and ignorance. Passion and ignorance increase the material propensities of hankering for material enjoyment, and a strong sense of lust provokes the accumulation of wealth and power. One who has conquered these two base mentalities and has raised himself to the platform of goodness, which is full of knowledge and morality, cannot control the senses, namely the eyes, tongue, and nose, ear, and touch. But one who has surrendered himself unto the lotus feet of the Hari, as above mentioned, can transcend all influence of the modes of material nature and be fixed in the service of the Lord. The Bhakti Yoga process, therefore, directly applies the senses of the loving service of the Lord. This prohibits the performer from engaging the material activities. This process of turning the senses from material attachment to the loving transcendental service of the Lord is called pratyahara, and the very process of the pranayam ultimately ending in samadhi or absorption in pleasing the Supreme Lord Hari by all means.
ना चलो
Yeah.
टेक्स्ट
विज्ञानात्मनि संयोजय क्षेत्रेज्ञे प्रविलाप्यतम ब्राह्मणे आत्मन अमाधारे घटांबर बिम ambavre. Dhṛtarāṣṭra will have to amalgamate his pure identity with intelligence and then merge into the Supreme Being with knowledge of his qualitative oneness as a living entity with the Supreme Brahman. Being freed from the blocked sky, he will have to rise to the spiritual sky. The living being, by his desiring the Lord it over the material world and declining to cooperate with the Supreme Lord, contacts the sum total of the material world, namely the Mahat Tattva. And from the Mahat Tattva, his false identity with the material world, intelligence, mind and senses is developed. This covers his pure spiritual identity. By the yogic process, when his pure identity is realized in self-realization, one has to revert the original position by amalgamating the five gross element and the subtle element, mind and intelligence, into the Mahat Tattva again. Thus, getting freed from the clutches of the Mahat Tattva, he has to merge in the existence of the Supreme Soul. In other words, he has to realize that qualitatively he is non-different from the Supreme Soul, and thus he transcends the material sky by his pure identical intelligence and thus becomes engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. This is the highest perfectional development of a spiritual identity, which was attained by the Dhṛtarāṣṭra by the grace of Vidura and the Lord. The Lord's mercy was bestowed upon him by his personal contact with Vidura, and when he was actually practicing the instructions of Vidura, the Lord helped him to attain the highest perfectional state. A pure devotee of the Lord does not live on any planet of the material sky, nor does he feel any contact with material element. His so-called material body does not exist, being surcharged with the spiritual current of the Lord's identical interest, and thus he is permanently freed from all contamination of the sum total of the Mahat Tattva. He is always in spiritual sky, which he attains by being transcendental to the sevenfold material covering by the effect of his devotional service. The conditioned soul are within the covering, whereas the liberated soul is far beyond the cover.
तो एक ही चीज यहाँ पर जस्ट मैं कहना चाह रहा हूँ कि यहाँ पर ये अच्छा बताया है कि बहुत अच्छा कि एक प्योर डिवोटी के कांटेक्ट से कितना बड़ा फायदा होता है। जैसा धृतराष्ट्र हो गया विदुर से, पूरी लाइफ वो पाप करता रहा, लेकिन वन कांटेक्ट विद मैं विदुर और एक प्योर डिवोटी, वो प्योर डिवोटी भी आकर के बन के आए थे मैत्रेयी ऋषि से उन्होंने डिस्कशंस किए थे। के बाद उनको रियलाइजेशन हुआ था। व्हेन ही केम बैक आफ्टर दैट 1 year सारे तीर्थ स्थानों में घूमने के बाद, तो ही वाज रियली ए प्योर डिवोटी ऑफ द सुप्रीम लॉर्ड। एंड देन व्हेन ही केम इन कांटेक्ट विद धृतराष्ट्र, क्योंकि ये चीज बड़ा मायने रखती है कि हाउ टू कम इन टच विद द प्योर डिवोटी। इसीलिए परपोर्ट पढ़ने पे वी कम इन टच विद प्रभुपाद। नेक्स्ट 56 चलो।
भूयस्त माया गुणोद दर्को निरुद्ध करणाशयः निर्वर्तिताखिलाहार अस्ते स्थाणुरी वाचलः तस्यांत रायो मैं वाभुः सनस्यता खिल कर्मणः।
हम्म
He will have to suspend all the actions of the senses, even from the outside, and will have to be impervious to interactions of the senses, which are influenced by the modes of material nature. After renouncing all material duties, he must become immovably established beyond all sources of hindrances on the path. Rasta has attained by the yogic process the stage of negation of all sorts of material reaction. The effects of the material modes of nature draw the victim to indefatigable desire of enjoying matter. But one can escape such false enjoyment by the yogic process. Every sense is always busy in searching for its food, and thus the conditioned soul is assaulted from all sides and has no chance to become steady in any pursuit. Maharaja Yudhishthira was advised by Narada not to disturb his uncle by attempting to bring him back home. He was now beyond the attraction of anything material. The material modes of nature, that the gunas, have their different modes of activities, but above the material modes of nature is a spiritual mode, which is absolute. Nirguna means without reaction. The spiritual mode and its effect are identical. Therefore, the spiritual quality is distinguished from its material counterpart by the word nirguna. After complete suspension of the material modes of nature, one is admitted to the spiritual sphere, and action dictated by the spiritual mode is called the devotional service or bhakti. Bhakti is therefore nirguna, attained by direct contact with the absolute. Okay.
ठीक है, वो पढ़ो टेक्स्ट 57.
सा वा अद्यतनाद राजन परतः पंच में अहनि कलेवरम हश्यति स्वयं तच्च भस्मी भविष्यति. O king, he will quit his body, most probably on the 5th day from today. His body will turn to ashes. Narad Muni prophecy prohibited Yudhishthira Maharaja from going to place where his uncle was staying, because even after quitting the body by his own mystic power, Dhṛtarāṣṭra would not, not be in need of any funeral ceremony. Narada Muni indicated that his body by itself would burn to ashes. The perfection of the yoga system is attained by such mystic power. The yogi is able to quit his body by his own choice of time and can attain any planet he desires by turning the present body into ashes by self-made fire.
हाँ, बस ये अब क्या नाम है, इसके अंदर में मेन चीज वो उन्होंने यही बता दी कि भाई अब नाउ जो है ना, मतलब ही इज बियॉन्ड रिटर्न. राज जो है बियॉन्ड रिटर्न. हालांकि उन्होंने बता दिया कि वो कहाँ पर हैं, बट दैट इज ऑल ओवर. एंड ही वो निर्गुण हो गए और वो उन्होंने निर्वाण की स्थिति में आ गए हैं और अपना देह त्याग कर देंगे. मतलब हो गए ना 5 तुम्हारे हैं. चलो अब तुम पढ़ो, वरुण पढ़ लो 5 अगले. अब हम लोगों ने जरा चेंज किया है, मतलब नाउ वी डोंट डिस्कस ईच श्लोक, है ना. 5वां 58 पढ़ो.
58. दाह्यमाणे ग्निभिर्देहे प्रत्युपत्नि सहोत्यजे बहिः स्थिता पतिं साध्वी तम अग्निम अनुवेक्ष्यति. While outside, observing her husband, who will burn in the fire of mystic power along with his thatched cottage, his chaste wife will enter the fire with rapt attention. Purport. Gāndhārī was an ideal chaste wife, a chaste lady, a life companion of her husband, and therefore when she saw her husband burning in the fire of mystic yoga along with his cottage of leaves, she despaired. She left home after losing her 100 sons, and in the forest she saw that her most beloved husband was also burning. Now she actually felt alone, and therefore she entered the fire of her husband and followed her husband to death. This entering of a chaste lady into the fire of her dead husband is called the sati rite, and the action is considered to be the most perfect for a woman. In a later age, the sati rite became an obnoxious criminal affair because the ceremony was forced upon even an unwilling woman. In this fallen age, it is not possible for any lady to follow the sati rite as chastely as was done by Gandhari and others in past ages. A chaste wife like Gandhari would feel the separation of her husband to be more burning than actual fire. Such a lady can observe the sati rite voluntarily, and there is no criminal force by anyone. When the rite became a formality only and force was applied upon a lady to follow the principle, actually it became criminal, and therefore the ceremony was to be stopped by state law. This prophecy of Narad Muni to Maharaj Yudhishthir forbade him to go with his widowed aunt.
Hmm.
Text
चलो
59.
हाँ
Vidurastu tad aścharyam nishamya purunandana harsha shoka yutastasmad gantatirtha nishevakaha. Vidura, after Vidura being affected with delight and grief, will then leave that place of sacred pilgrimage. Purport. Vidur was astonished to see the marvelous departure of his brother Dhritarashtra as a liberated yogi, for in his past life he was much attached to materialism. Of course, it was only due to Vidur that his brother attained the desirable goal of life. Vidur was therefore glad to learn about it, but he was sorry that he could not make his brother turn into a pure devotee. This was not done by Vidur because Dhritarashtra, being inimical to the Pandavas, who were all devotees of the Lord. An offense at the feet of a Vaishnava is more dangerous than an offense at the lotus feet of the Lord. Vidura was certainly very liberal to bestow mercy upon his brother Dhritarashtra, whose past life was very materialistic. But ultimately, the result of such mercy is certainly dependent on the will of the Supreme Lord in the present life. Therefore, Dhritarashtra attained liberation only, and after many such liberated states of life, one can attain to the stage of devotional service. Vidur was certainly very mortified by the death of his brother and sister-in-law, and the only remedy to mitigate such lamentation was to go out to pilgrimage. Thus, Maharaj Yudhishthir had no chance to call back Vidur, his surviving uncle. इसमें जो one thing I will just want to point out is कि अगर आपको डिवोशनल सर्विस अगर आपने स्टार्ट कर दी है किसी भी फॉर्म में, देन यू आर वेरी वेरी एडवांस्ड एज पर दिस ऑल्सो, क्योंकि ये धृतराष्ट्र को भी एज यू जस्ट सॉ कि भाई उनको लिबरेटेड हो गए वो, लेकिन उनको भी इसके कई इस तरह के जन्म लग जाएंगे इवन टू कम टू द स्टेज ऑफ डिवोशनल सर्विस. तो अगर आपने डिवोशनल सर्विस, हम लोग उसको कभी कभी नॉट टू बी टेकन फॉर ग्रांटेड, जैसे कि हम लोग ये पढ़ रहे हैं या मतलब भगवत गीता पढ़ रहे हैं या चैंटिंग कर रहे हैं या टेम्पल जा रहे हैं और भगवान को डिवोटी बनने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, दैट इज नॉट टू बी टेकन फॉर ग्रांटेड. इट इज आफ्टर मेनी मेनी बर्थ्स एंड इट्स अ वेरी नॉट एज द ईगो थिंग, बट इट्स अ वेरी मतलब वन शुड नो व्हाट ही इज.
मतलब कि वरुण, ये एक गोल्डन अपॉर्चुनिटी मिली है और उस पे
गोल्डन
ज्यादा से
अपॉर्चुनिटी.
ज्यादा हमको अपनी तरफ से भी एफर्ट्स डालने चाहिए जहां कहीं भी हम हैं उस स्टेज
यस,
पे. हाँ, और ये अपने मन में
दैट्स माय
समझना
थिंग.
चाहिए कि ये बहुत महत्वपूर्ण, बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है. डोंट
यस,
टेक इट लाइटली.
be serious about it, जैसे
हाँ.
शिला प्रभुपाद, be serious about it. Okay, 60. इति उक्त्वा थारुहत स्वर्गम नारदः सह शुम्भुरु युधिष्ठिरो वाचस्तस्य हृदि कृत्वा जहचूचः. Having spoken thus, the great sage Narad, along with his veena, ascended into outer space. Yudhishthir kept his instruction in his heart and so was able to get rid of all lamentations. Purport. Shri Naraji is an eternal spaceman, having been endowed with a spiritual body by the grace of the Lord. He can travel in the outer spaces of both the material and spiritual worlds without restriction and can approach any planet in unlimited space within no time. We have already discussed his previous life as the son of a maidservant. Because of his association with pure devotees, he was elevated to the position of an eternal spaceman and thus has freedom of movement. One should therefore try to follow in the footsteps of Narad Muni and not make a futile effort to reach other planets by mechanical means. Maharaj Yudhishthir was a pious king and therefore he could see Narad Muni occasionally. Anyone who desires to see Narad Muni must first be pious and follow in the footsteps of Narada Muni. Thus ends the Bhakti Vedanta purports of the first canto, 13th chapter of the Srimad Bhagwatam, entitled Dhṛtarāṣṭra Quits Home. Okay. Chapter 14.
धृतराष्ट्र क्विट्स होम, ये बड़ा मतलब इसको हम लोग को ध्यान रखना चाहिए कि भाई ये मतलब जब आप कथा के बारे में मतलब मेडिटेट करते हैं ना, तो थोड़ा सा इसको देन यू विल गेट रिमाइंडेड कि भाई क्या क्या हुआ था। मतलब नारद मुनि मतलब वो सबसे पहले विदुर आए और फिर प्योर डिवोटी का क्या एसोसिएशन है, धृतराष्ट्र हाउ ही वाज हेल्ड बैक। समटाइम्स इट इज बेटर टू गो बैक एंड रिफ्लेक्ट अपॉन दीज थिंग्स। Disappearance of Lord Krishna.
Chapter 14.
Very chapter is coming. Yeah, you have two more.
Two more, yeah. Chapter 14. The disappearance of Lord Krishna. Text 1. Suta uvacha sampratishte dvarakayam jishnao bandhu didrikshaya gyatum cha punya shlokasya krishnasya cha vicheshititam. Shri Suta Goswami said, Arjun went to Dwarka to see Lord Shri Krishna and other friends, and also to learn from the Lord of his next activities. Purport. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, the Lord descends on the earth for the protection of the faithful and annihilation of the impious. So, after the battle of Kurukshetra and establishment of Maharaj Yudhishtra, the mission of the Lord was complete. The Pandavas, especially Shri Arjun, were eternal companions of the Lord, and therefore Arjun went to Dwarka to hear from the Lord of his next program of work. Text 2. Vyatitah katichin masas dadanayat tatu Arjuna dadarsha ghora rupani nimittani kurudvaha. A few months passed, and Arjun did not return. Maharaj Yudhishthira then began to observe some inauspicious omens which were fearful in themselves. Purport. Lord Shri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is ad infinitum, more powerful than the most powerful sun of our experience. Billions and billions of suns are created by him and annihilated by him within his one breathing period. In the material world, the sun is considered to be the source of all productivity and material energy, and only due to the sun can we have the necessities of life. Therefore, during the personal presence of the Lord on the earth, all paraphernalia for our peace and prosperity, especially religion and knowledge, were in full display because of the Lord's presence, just as there is a full flood of light in the presence of the glowing sun. Maharaj Yudhishthira observed some discrepancies in his kingdom, and therefore he became very anxious about Arjun, who was long absent. And there was also no news about Dwarka's well-being. He suspected the disappearance of Lord Krishna, otherwise there would have been no possibility of fearful omens.
मतलब कोई कम्युनिकेशन नहीं हुआ था लॉर्ड कृष्ण का युधिष्ठिर के साथ?
क्या
मतलब क्या लॉर्ड कृष्णा उनको बता करके नहीं गए थे? वो कह रहे ना डिसअपियरिंग ऑफ लॉर्ड कृष्णा।
नहीं, डिसअपियरेंस अपना थोड़ी बता के गए थे। वो तो लॉर्ड कृष्णा तो बहुत वो पहले चले गए, क्या नाम, काफी पहले चले गए। मतलब
वहीं पे
वो लॉर्ड कृष्णा तो डिपार्ट कर गए थे ना, जब वो कुंती माता ने उनको रोका, फिर उन्होंने उनको रोका, बट फिर वो फाइनली ही वेंट। मतलब
नहीं, ये तो डिसअपियरेंस की बात कर रही है
ये
मौसी,
डिसअपियरेंस
डिपार्ट की बात नहीं।
गोइंग
डिसअपियर
ऑल
मतलब
टुगेदर,
बैक टू गॉड।
वो
हाँ, बैक
थोड़ी
ऑल
बता के गए,
नॉट
बट
वो
ये
नहीं।
नारद मुनि ने उनको हिंट दिया था। नारद मुनि ने उनको हिंट दिया था कि भाई अब जो है उनका काम कंप्लीट हो गया है, एंड नाउ ही डिपार्ट फ्रॉम अर्थ। एंड देन क्या नाम है, अर्जुन तो उनके साथ द्वापर वहां पे गए थे द्वारका, और वहां से लौट के नहीं आए, तो फिर ये वरी कर रहे हैं, और बैड ओमेंस भी दिखने लगे इनको। टेक्स्ट 3। कालस्य च गतिम रौद्राम विपर्यस्ततु धर्मिणा पापी यसीम निर्णा वार्ताम क्रोध लोभ नृतात्मनाम। He saw that the direction of eternal time had changed, and this was very fearful. There were disruptions in the seasonal irregularities. The people in general had become very greedy, angry, deceitful, and he saw that they were adopting foul means of livelihood. Purport. When civilization is disconnected from the loving relation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Symptoms like changes of seasonal regulations, foul means of livelihood, greed, anger, and fraudulence become rampant. The change of seasonal regulations refer to one season's atmosphere becoming manifest in another season. For example, the rainy seasons being transferred to autumn, or the fructification of fruits and flowers from one season in another season. A godless man is invariably greedy, angry, and fraudulent. Such a man can earn his livelihood by any means, black or white. During the reign of Maharaja Yudhishtra, all the above symptoms were conspicuous by their absence. But Maharaja Yudhishthira was astonished to experience even a slight change in the godly atmosphere of his kingdom. At once, he suspected the disappearance of the Lord. Foul means of livelihood implies deviation from one's occupational duty. There are prescribed duties for everyone, such as Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. But anyone who deviates from his prescribed duty and declares another's duty to be his own is following a foul and improper duty. A man becomes too greedy for wealth and power when he has no higher objective in life, and when he thinks that this earthly life of a few years is all in all. Ignorance is the cause of all these anomalies in human society, and to remove this ignorance, especially in this age of degradation, the powerful sun is there to distribute light in the shape of Srimad Bhagwatam. Now, text 4. Jiha prayam vyavahritam shatya mishram cha sauhirdam pitri matri suhrid bhratri dampatinam cha kalkanam. All ordinary transactions and dealings become polluted with cheating. Even between friends and in the familial affairs, there was always misunderstandings between fathers, mothers, and sons, between well-wishers and between brothers. Even between husbands and wives, there was always strain and quarrel. Purport. A conditioned living being is endowed with 4 principles of malpractice, namely errors, insanity, inability, and cheating. These are signs of imperfection, and out of the 4, the propensity to cheat others is most prominent. And this cheating practice is there in the conditioned souls because the conditioned souls are primarily in the material world imbued with an unnatural desire to lord it over the material world. A living being in his pure state is not conditioned by the laws because in his pure state he is conscious that a living being is eternally subservient to the Supreme Being, and thus it is always good for him to remain subservient instead of falsely trying to lord it over the property of the Supreme Lord. In the conditioned state, the living being is not satisfied even if he is actually becomes the lord of all that he surveys, which he never becomes, and therefore he becomes the victim of all kinds of cheating, even with his nearest and most intimate relations. In such an unsatisfactory state of affairs, there is no harmony even between fathers and sons or between the husband and wife, but all these contending difficulties can be mitigated by one process, and that is the devotional service of the Lord. The word of hypocrisy can be checked only by counteraction through devotional service to the Lord and nothing else. Maharaja Yudhishthira, having observed the disparities, conjectured the disappearance of the Lord from the earth. भगवान की तरफ ध्यान लगाने से काफी चीजें मिटिगेट हो जाएंगी, मतलब ये सब चीजें भी चेक में आ जाएंगी. निमित्तान्यत्यरिष्ठानि काले त्वन गुते निर्णाम लोभाधर्म प्रकृतिम दृष्टो वाचनुजम नृप. In course of time, it came to pass that the people in general became accustomed to greed, anger, pride, etc. Maharaja Yudhishthira, observing all these omens, spoke to his younger brother. Such a pious king as Maharaja Yudhishthira at once became perturbed when there were such inhuman symptoms as greed, anger, irreligiosity, and hypocrisy rampant in society. It appears from the statement that all these symptoms of degraded society were unknown to the people of the time, and it was astonishing for them to have experienced them with the advent of Kali-yuga or the age of quarrel. कलयुग जो है ना मतलब दस्तक देने लग गया. अच्छा, अब क्या नाम है टेक्स्ट 6. युधिष्ठिर उवाच संप्रेषितो द्वारिकायां जिष्णु ब्रबंधु दृष्टया ज्ञातुं च पुण्य श्लोकस्य कृष्णस्य च विचेष्टितम्. Maharaja Yudhishthira said to his younger brother Bhīmsen, I sent Arjun to Dwarka to meet his friend and to learn from the personality of Godhead Krishna of his program of work. Text 7. Gata saptadhuna masa Bhīmsen tavanuja nayati kasya va hatornaham vedada majjasa. Since he departed, 7 months have passed, yet he has not returned. I do not know factually how things are going there. तो ये बात है, भीमसेन से उन्होंने अपना बताया कि भाई गए थे वो. अब पढ़ो भाई टेक्स्ट 8. राधा तुम पढ़ो
जी. अपि देवर्षिणा दिष्टा सा कालो यमुपस्थितः यदात्मनो गंगामाकीडं भवनास्तु स्रक्षति. Translation: Is he going to quit his earthly pastime? As Devarshi Narad indicated, had that time already arrived? Purport: As we have discussed many times, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, has many plenary expansions, and each and every one of them, although equally powerful, execute different functions. In Bhagavad Gita, there are different statements by the Lord, and each of these statements is meant for different plenary portions or portions of the plenary portions. For example, Śrī Kṛṣṇa, the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita, whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practices, O descendant of Bharat, and a predominant rise of a religion, at that time I descend myself to deliver the faithful, to annihilate the miscreants, and also to re-establish the principles of occupational duty. I appear in every age. I should cease to work. If I should cease to work, then all humanity would be misdirected. I would also be the cause of creating unwanted population, and I would thereby destroy the peace of all sentient beings. Whatever action a great man performs, common man will follow, and whatever standard he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. All the above statement by the Lord apply to different plenary portions of the Lord, namely his expansion such as Śrī Vasudev, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Narayana. These are all he himself in different transcendental expansions, and still the Lord as Śrī Kṛṣṇa functions in a very different sphere of transcendental exchange with different grades of devotees. And yet Lord Śrī Kṛṣṇa, as he is, appears once every 12 hours of Brahma time, or after a lapse of this much solar years, in each and every universe, and all his transcendental pastime are displayed in each and every universe in a routine spool. But in that routine spool, the function of Lord Krishna, Lord Vasudeva, etc. are complex problem for the layman. There is no difference between the Lord's self and the Lord's transcendental body. The expansion execute differential activities. When the Lord, however, appears in his person as Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa, his other plenary portion also join in him by his inconceivable potency called Yog Maya, and thus the Lord Krishna of Vrindavan is different from the Lord Krishna of Mathura or the Lord Krishna of Dwarka. The Virat Roop of Lord Krishna is also different from him by his inconceivably potency. The Virat Roop exhibited on the battlefield of Kurukshetra is the material conception of his form. Therefore, it should be understood that when Lord Krishna was apparently killed by the bow and arrow of the hunter, the Lord left his so-called material body in the material world. The Lord is Kaivalya, and for him there is no difference between matter and spirit because everything is created from him. Therefore, his quitting one sort of body or accepting another body does not mean that he is like the ordinary living being. All such activities are simultaneously one and different by his inconceivably potency. When Maharaja Yudhishthira was lamenting the possibility of his disappearance, it was just in pursuance of a custom of lamenting the disappearance of a great friend. But factually, the Lord never quits his transcendental body, as is misconceived by less intelligent person. Such less intelligent person have been condemned by the Lord himself in Bhagavad Gita, and they are known as mudhas. Mudhas. Thus, the Lord left his body means that he left again his plenary portion in the respective dhamas, transcendental abode, as he left his Virat Roop in the material world. इसमें सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट बात ये इन्होंने ये कहा है कि भगवान के द्वारा अगर कोई भी एक्टिविटी होती है तो उसको जो सिंपल ह्यूमन माइंड जो इंटरप्रेट करता है, तो हमको ये डिफरेंस समझना चाहिए कि भगवान का शरीर छोड़ना और एक सामान्य मनुष्य का शरीर छोड़ना दो बहुत अलग अलग बातें हैं।
बिल्कुल ठीक कहा।
हाँ,
बिल्कुल सही कहा एकदम। मतलब वो जो है ना उनका
नेक्स्ट
हाँ
ये यस मान्नः संपदो राज्यम दाराः प्राणाः कुलम प्रजाः आसंस पत्न विजयो लोकाश्च यद नुग्रहात्। Translation: From him only all our kingly opulence, good wives, lives, progeny, control over our subjects, victory over our enemies, and future accommodations in higher planets have become possible. All this is due to his causeless mercy upon us. Purport: Material prosperity consists of a good wife, good home, sufficient land, good children, aristocratic family relations, victory over competitors, and by pious work. Attainment of accommodations in higher celestial plane for better facilities of material amenities. These facilities are earned not only by one's hard manual labor, but by unfair means. But by the mercy of the Supreme Lord, prosperity earned by one's personal endeavor also depends on the mercy of the Lord. Personal labor must be there in addition to the Lord's benediction. But without the Lord's benediction, no one is successful. No one is successful simply by personal labor. The modernized man of Kali Yuga believes in personal endeavor and denies the benediction of the Supreme Lord. Even a great sannyasi of India delivered a speech in Chicago presenting the benedictions of the Supreme Lord. But as far as Vedic Shastras are concerned, as we find in the page of Srimad Bhagwatam, the ultimate sanction of all success rests in the hands of the Supreme Lord. Maharaja Yudhishthira admits this truth in his personal success, and it behoves one to follow in the footsteps of a great king and devotee of the Lord to make a life full success. If one could achieve success without the sanction of the Lord, then no medical practitioner would fail to cure a patient. Despite the most advanced treatment of a suffering patient by the most up-to-date medical practitioner, there is death, and even in the most hopeless case, without medical treatment, a patient is cured astonishingly. Therefore, the conclusion is that God's sanction is the immediate cause for all happenings, good or bad. Any successful man should feel grateful to the Lord for all that he has achieved.
ठीक है
जी नेक्स्ट
आगे मैं
है रूपा,
रीड कर चुके हैं।
मैं पढ़ रही हूँ।
नहीं, अच्छा
पश्योत्पातान् व्याघ्रः दिव्यान् भौमान् सदैहिकान् दारुणान् शंसतो दूराभ्यदम भयम नो बुद्धि मोहनम। Translation: Just see, O man, with a tiger's strength, how many miseries due to celestial influence, earthly reactions, and bodily pains, all very dangerous in themselves, are foreboding danger in the near future by deluding our intelligence. Purport: Material advancement of civilization means advancement of the reaction of the threefold miseries due to celestial influence, earthly reactions, and bodily or mental pains. By the celestial influence of the stars, there are many calamities like excessive heat, cold, rain, or no rains, and the after effects are famine, disease, and epidemic. The aggregate result is the agony of the body and the mind. Man-made material science cannot do anything to counteract these threefold miseries. They are all punishments from the superior energy of Maya under the direction of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, our constant touch with the Lord by devotional service can give us release without our being disturbed in the discharge of our human duties. The Asuras, however, who do not believe in the existence of God, make their own plans to counteract all these threefold miseries, and so they meet with failures every time. The Bhagavad Gita 7.14 clearly states that the reaction of material energy is never to be conquered because of the binding effects of the three modes. They can simply be overcome by one who surrenders fully in devotion under the lotus feet of the Lord. Urv chi bahvo mahayam स्फुर्त्यंग पुनः पुनः वेपथु श्रापित हृदय आराध इष्यन्ति विप्रियम. Translation: The left side of my body, my thighs, arm, and eyes, all are quivering again and again. I am having heart palpitations due to fear. All this indicates undesirable happening. Purport: Material existence is full of undesirables. Things we do not want are forced upon us by some superior energy, and we do not see that these undesirables are under the grip of the three modes of material nature. When a man's left eye, arm, and thigh are all quiver constantly, one must know that something is going to happen which is undesirable. These undesirables are compared to fire in a forest. No one goes into the forest to set fires, but fires automatically take place in the forest, creating inconceivable calamities for the living beings of the forest. Such a fire cannot be extinguished by any human effort. The fire can be extinguished only by the mercy of the Lord, who sends clouds to pour water on the forest. Similarly, undesirable happening in the life cannot be checked by any number of plans. Such miseries can be removed only by the mercy of the Lord, who sends his bona fide representatives to enlighten human beings and thus save them from all calamities.
बड़ा अच्छा बताया क्या नाम है इन्होंने।
और ये
तो
हम लोग लाइफ में देखते भी हैं।
हाँ हाँ, लेफ्ट उनके अंग फड़क रहे थे और यू कैन फील इट, यस। और एक ही तरीका है कि भाई मतलब भगवान की शरण में जाओ, यही बता रहे हैं।
जी जी जी
बेसिकली यही बता रहे हैं। इन सब चीज़ों से बचने का और कोई तरीका नहीं है। अगर आप मटेरियल तरीके से ना, जो ये मटेरियल, जो मेरे पास गाड़ी नहीं है, घोड़ा नहीं है, घर नहीं है, पुत्र नहीं है, पुत्री नहीं है एंड ऑल दैट, तो वो जो है ना, वो सब कुछ भगवान की मर्जी से होता है। आप अपने आप से प्लान बनाते रहो, कुछ नहीं होने वाला है नहीं कुछ।
जी
जस्ट कर्म है, मतलब हैव टू प्रे टू द लॉर्ड, नॉट फॉर दीज थिंग्स बट कर्म है, जस्ट प्रे टू हिम, है ना, फॉर कर्म साल्वेशन, दैट्स इट, है ना, ये बात है। तो
जी
आज कर में अभी है टाइम या एक आध और पढ़ने का, या एक और पढ़ लो तो।
ऐसे इसमें एक एक तो
हाँ हाँ, ये
इसमें ये भी एक और भी लगता है कि मतलब इस बड़ा हेल्पलेस सिचुएशन है ह्यूमन बीइंग की।
हाँ,
मतलब द दीज अनडिजायरेबल्स आर कंपेयर्ड टू फायर इन द फॉरेस्ट। नो वन गोज इनटू द फॉरेस्ट टू सेट फायर्स, बट फायर्स ऑटोमेटिकली टेक प्लेस इन द फॉरेस्ट। मतलब कि एक तो आप अपनी लाइफ में, मतलब आप कोई भी नहीं चाहता दुख, कोई भी नहीं चाहता परेशानी, बट अपने आप होती रहती हैं वो।
बिल्कुल।
दे आर लाइक फॉरेस्ट इन द फायर इन द फॉरेस्ट। कोई खुद थोड़ा ना आग लगाने जाता है अपने अपने खुद के जीवन में, बट होने लग जाती हैं। अच्छा, फिर उसका सोल्यूशन क्या है? क्रिएटिंग इनकंसीवेबल कैलामिटीज। अच्छा, सच ए फायर कैन नॉट बी एक्सटिंग्विश्ड बाय एनी ह्यूमन एफर्ट्स ऑल्सो। तो अब आप उसको रोक भी नहीं सकते अपने एफर्ट्स से। आपको लगता रहता है कि आप अपने एफर्ट्स से रोक लोगे, बट आप रोक भी नहीं पा रहे हो। The only thing that you can do is कि भाई a fire can be extinguished only by the mercy of the Lord, who sends clouds to pour water on the forest. Similarly, undesirable happenings in life cannot be checked by any number of plans. ये बड़ा important चीज है, यही है basis of I am not the controller and Lord Krishna is the controller. अगर हमारा कंट्रोल का यही तो फाउंडेशनल है कि वी कैन मेक ए प्लान, वी कैन मेक एन एफर्ट, कंट्रोल अवर लाइफ, कंट्रोल द लाइफ ऑफ। अगर यही तो, ये अगर आदमी को समझ में आ जाए, सच मिजरीज कैन बी रिमूव्ड ओनली बाय द मर्सी ऑफ द लॉर्ड, हु सेंड्स हिज बोनाफाइड, कैसे? हु सेंड्स हिज बोनाफाइड रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स टू एनलाइटन ह्यूमन बीइंग्स एंड दस सेव देम फ्रॉम ऑल कैलामिटीज। नॉट जैसे कि वो कोई मटेरियल सॉल्यूशंस है, बट जैसे नारद मुनि आए बीच बीच में, जैसे श्रीला प्रभुपाद ने ये बुक्स ट्रांसलेट कर दी, इनके टच में रह के ही आप ये कैलामिटीज को खत्म कर सकते हो और अपने
कम कर सकते
प्लान्स
हो या
बनाते
उनका
रहो।
सफरिंग को मिटिगेट कर सकते हो।
मिटिगेट कर सकते हो, ऐसे अपने प्लान्स बनाते रहो।
मटेरियल लेवल पे तो करेंगे ना, तो जैसा उसमें वो श्लोक में नहीं है कि क्रम में वो, मतलब काम की जो आग है उसको, मतलब आप इफ यू ट्राई टू उसके अंदर में, तो फिर और आप फ्यूल डालोगे क्या नाम है, मतलब तो और भड़केगी आग। मतलब उसको काम को सेटिस्फाई करने की कोशिश करोगे ना, तो और भड़केगी आग। तो दैट इज ऑल्सो देयर क्या नाम है, सो इसीलिए इट इज बेटर टू कंसेंट्रेट, मतलब अपने सारे सेंसेस को भगवान में लगाने से, दैट इज द ओनली सोल्यूशन, और कुछ है नहीं। अपने आप से प्रॉब्लम्स को, जैसा इन्होंने कहा ना कि नाम है कि प्रॉब्लम्स तो आएंगी ही आएंगी, मतलब वो उनको, उनका आपके ऊपर कोई कंट्रोल नहीं है। उन्होंने बता भी दिया, आदि दैविक परेशानियों के बारे में बताया है शायद इसके पहले वाले में, कि आदि दैविक जो है चारों तरफ पूरे वेदर्स चेंज होने लगी है, ये होने लगा, तो आदि दैविक वो होने लग गया उनके।
एक्चुअली थोड़ी देर पहले वो जो 7.14, वही जो आप कोट करते रहते हो ना, वही वाला कोट है, मैं देख रहा था खोल के। दैवी ही ये एषा गुणमायी मम माया दुरत्तया, मम एवा ये प्रपद्यन्ते मायम एतम तरन्ति ते। दिस डिवाइन एनर्जी ऑफ माइंड कंसिस्टिंग ऑफ द थ्री मोड्स ऑफ मटेरियल नेचर इज डिफिकल्ट टू ओवरकम। ये लॉर्ड कृष्णा खुद कह रहे हैं, ये जो मेरी ये जो तीनों मोड्स हैं, इट इज वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू ओवरकम, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. Those who have surrendered unto
हाँ, यही है सबसे, मतलब वो चीज़ जो है। और ये लोग, यस, दैट इज इट। मतलब मेनली चीज़ है भाई कि कैसे आप जो है ना, मटेरियल चीज़ों से हटा के अपना ध्यान जो है ना इस पे लगा। आदमी नहीं, मतलब ये फिर वो बड़ा उल्टे डायरेक्शन में सोचने लग जाता है ना, कि भाई यही तो है सब कुछ, बिकॉज ऑल दिस अपीयर्स रियल। कैसे अपना पैसा जो है, और पैसा और पैसा और पैसा, इसमें ही फंसा रहता है, जबकि उस पैसे का कुछ होने वाला है नहीं। तो इट वाज नाइस, आई थिंक। मैं मतलब ये आज 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 जिस तरह से किया, इसमें कोई प्रॉब्लम तो नहीं है, आई नो,
नहीं, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं जी जी।
है ना? इट इज ऑल राइट।
शाम का टाइम बताइए जी जी।
है
शाम को कितने बजे?
शाम को सेम टाइम। अब ये जरा सा थोड़ा देखने का है कि शाम को जो 7:30 बजे हम करते हैं ना,
जी।
शाम को 7:30 बजे ठीक है भाई, है ना? 7:30 से 8:30, है ना?
उसे भी
यहाँ
पूछ
पे
लीजिए।
इंडिया में। और ये वरुण का अपना पूछ लो, ये कह रही है ना कि क्या नाम, हम लोग इसको रोज भी कंटिन्यू कर सकते हैं।
अच्छा, कौन सी चीज? 7:30 से 8:30 आप लोगों
जैसे
को
जो
क्या
जो
चीज पढ़ना?
शाम को 7:30 जो भगवत गीता पढ़ते हैं ना, हफ्ते में एक दिन,
हम्म।
उसी
हम्म।
टाइम स्लॉट में डेली हम भागवतम को कंटिन्यू कर दें।
भगवान कंटिन्यू करते हैं, हाँ, यस।
हैं?
या
है ना? 7:30 बजे हम लोगों को भी सूट करेगा। ठीक
ठीक
है।
है।
हाँ,
मौसी क्या कह रही है? कट रही थी आपकी आवाज।
तुम्हारे लिए टाइम ठीक है, 7:30 to
हाँ
8:30।
हाँ, ठीक है, सुबह 9 से 10, हाँ ठीक।
सुबह 9 से 10
डन।
के लिए हो जाएगा, है ना?
या
और हम
जी
लोग 7:30 से 8:30, अदरवाइज कुछ यही सब उल्टा सीधा प्रोग्राम ही देख रहे होते हैं, कुछ कर रहे होते
जी
या
जी जी
हैं, है ना?
जी।
तो ठीक है, आज आज से स्टार्ट करते हैं। मैं जरा चेक कर लूंगा कि वो वाला जो जो वो है, वो रेस्ट्रिक्शंस तो नहीं है उसमें, उसी वाली लिंक में कर लेंगे जो भगवत गीता की लिंक है।
लेकिन इसमें ये थोड़ा सा वो रहेगा, क्योंकि यही कंटिन्यू करते रहेंगे तो अगर जैसे कोई किसी दिन मिस कर जाएगा तो वो मतलब ऐसा, वैसे भागवतम में कोई मिस होके कहीं आगे से ज्वाइन कर
तो
जाए तो
कोई
उससे
फर्क नहीं
फर्क नहीं
पड़ता,
पड़ता।
यू नो,
बिल्कुल, तो बट
इवन
आई
वन
जस्ट वांटेड
श्लोका
टू,
इज पोटेंट एनफ।
हाँ,
हाँ
तो वो कोई ऐसा कुछ वो
ऐसा
नहीं है,
कुछ
तो
नहीं
आई
होगा।
जस्ट वांटेड टू से
लेकिन
इट।
यह है कि अगर आपको ऐसा लग रहा है तो फिर वैसे भी हम ना थोड़ा बहुत समराइज किया करेंगे,
हाँ,
मतलब दो
समराइज
मिनट के
करते
हाँ
लिए
हाँ
समराइज कर लेंगे, जैसे
हाँ,
कि भाई
अगर
अब
कोई मिस हो जाएगा।
हाँ, जस्ट जस्ट समराइज की कर, मैं कथा की वाली चीज को कि भाई क्या
हैं। जी
कंटेंट चल रहा है।
जी।
ठीक है ना?
नहीं वो ठीक है, नहीं नहीं, आई एम अप फॉर।
ठीक है, फिर आज का यहीं पे समाप्त करते हैं। और अभी जो है ना, बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट प्रसंग आ गया है, तो इट विल बी इंटरेस्टिंग नेक्स्ट है। हरे कृष्णा, हरे कृष्णा, कृष्ण कृष्णा, हरे हरे, हरे राम, हरे राम, राम राम, हरे हरे।
हरे कृष्णा,
हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे।
हरे कृष्णा, कृष्ण कृष्णा, हरे हरे, हरे राम, राम राम, हरे हरे।
हरे
हरे
कृष्णा,
कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे।
हरे कृष्णा, कृष्ण कृष्णा, हरे हरे, हरे राम, राम राम, हरे हरे।
हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे।
थैंक यू ऑल, थैंक यू।
थैंक यू।